They thought the woman standing at the entrance was lost. What they didn't know was that within the next hour, an entire jiu-jitsu academy would be forced to question everything they believed about strength, experience, and first impressions. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or state in the comments below. And if you believe people deserve respect before judgment, be sure to like and subscribe. Stories like this remind us that appearances rarely tell the whole story. Now, back to the story. The afternoon sun streamed through the tall front windows of Iron Ridge Jiu-Jitsu Academy, casting long golden rectangles across the polished mats. Inside, the steady rhythm of training filled the room. Students practiced drills in pairs while instructors moved among them, offering corrections and advice. The academy had built a reputation throughout the region as a serious place for serious competitors. State champions trained here. Tournament winners displayed their medals on the walls. Photos of victorious athletes lined the entrance hallway like a gallery of achievement. Then the front door opened. A woman stepped inside quietly. She appeared to be in her early 40s. Her blonde hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. She wore a plain gray sweatshirt, blue jeans, and running shoes that looked well used but carefully maintained. Nothing about her appearance attracted attention at first. In fact, most people barely glanced her way. But one person did. Head instructor Travis Mercer noticed her immediately. At 47, Travis had built his reputation on confidence. Some would have called it confidence. Others might have called it arrogance. Either way, he carried himself like a man accustomed to being the most knowledgeable person in every room. As he watched the woman hesitate near the reception desk, a smirk slowly appeared on his face. He exchanged a glance with one of his assistant instructors before casually walking over. The woman offered a polite smile. "Hi," she said softly. "I recently moved to town and was hoping to learn more about your beginner classes." Travis looked her up and down. His eyes lingered on her age, her casual clothes, and her unassuming posture. Then he chuckled. Not loudly, just enough for nearby students to hear. "Beginner classes?" he repeated. "Well, that's probably a good place to start." A few students glanced over. The woman simply nodded. "I've done some training before," she replied. "But it's been a while." Travis folded his arms. "Some training, huh?" His voice carried just enough sarcasm to draw attention. "Let me guess. One of those fitness self-defense programs at the local community center?" A few students laughed. The woman didn't react. Her smile remained calm. Her eyes remained steady. Travis seemed almost disappointed that his joke hadn't landed harder. Across the room, several students paused their drills to watch. Something about the exchange had shifted the atmosphere. The woman wasn't arguing. She wasn't defending herself. She simply stood there quietly. And for reasons none of them could explain, that calmness seemed to bother Travis more than any response would have. "Actually," she said politely, "I was hoping to observe a class first if that's okay." Travis laughed again. "Of course. But just so you know, this isn't yoga. We train pretty hard here." More laughter followed. The woman nodded once. "I understand." The room echoed with scattered chuckles as Travis walked away feeling satisfied with himself. But among the students, one young man near the back of the academy continued watching her. He couldn't explain why. Something felt different. Something didn't fit the picture everyone else seemed so eager to believe. And while the room returned to training, the woman quietly took a seat against the wall, her hands folded calmly in her lap. She looked less like someone who had wandered into the wrong building and more like someone who had spent years learning exactly when to remain silent. The academy didn't know it yet, but the lesson they were about to learn had already walked through the front door. For the next 20 minutes, the academy returned to its normal rhythm, but the woman sitting quietly against the wall seemed to occupy more attention than anyone wanted to admit. Travis noticed students glancing in her direction between drills. He noticed conversations starting and stopping whenever she looked up. Most of all, he noticed how completely unbothered she appeared. That calm confidence irritated him more than he cared to acknowledge. He had expected embarrassment. He had expected discomfort. Instead, she sat comfortably, observing every movement on the mat with quiet focus. Her eyes followed footwork patterns. She watched transitions. She noticed details that most spectators would never recognize. Across the room, assistant instructor Derek walked over to Travis and lowered his voice. "You really think she is completely new?" Travis shrugged. "Does it matter?" Derek glanced toward the woman. "I do not know. She watches like she understands what she is looking at. Travis smirked. Everybody thinks they understand until they step onto the mat. A few minutes later, the advanced class began. Several students gathered near the center while Travis explained a technical sequence. The woman remained seated silently against the wall. At one point, Travis demonstrated a position and deliberately looked toward her. "This is usually where beginners get confused," he announced loudly enough for half the room to hear. A few students laughed again. The woman simply nodded politely. "Thank you," she said. Her calm response seemed to drain the humor from the moment. Travis immediately shifted gears. If she refused to become embarrassed, he would find another way to prove his point. As the class continued, he began asking questions to the group. Most students answered correctly. Then he suddenly turned toward the woman. "You said you have trained before." Every head rotated toward her. "A little," she replied. Travis smiled. "Then maybe you can tell us what you would do from this position." The question sounded innocent enough, but several students recognized the trap immediately. Even experienced practitioners often struggled to answer it correctly. The woman looked at the demonstration for several seconds. "There are several options," she said. "It depends on timing and what the other person gives you." The room grew quieter. Travis folded his arms. "Go ahead." She carefully described two possible solutions. Then she mentioned a third adjustment that none of the students had considered. A brief silence followed. Derek blinked. One of the purple belts frowned thoughtfully. Travis quickly laughed. "Well, that is one opinion." The class moved on, but something had changed. The young student who had been observing her earlier continued paying close attention. His name was Ethan, a college sophomore who trained 5 days a week. The more he watched her, the less she resembled a beginner. It was not what she said. It was what she did not say. She never tried to impress anyone. She never volunteered information. Yet every time Travis attempted to put her on the spot, she answered calmly and without hesitation. Near the end of class, Travis gathered everyone together. A competitive grin appeared on his face. An idea had formed in his mind. If words were not enough to expose her, perhaps a demonstration would be. "You know what?" he announced. "Tomorrow we are holding open challenge rounds for visitors. Maybe our guest would like to participate." Excited murmurs spread across the academy. The woman slowly looked up. Travis smiled as dozens of eyes fixed on her. He believed he was offering her an opportunity. In reality, he had just taken the first step toward creating a problem he could not yet see. The next afternoon, Iron Ridge Jiu-Jitsu Academy was busier than usual. Word had spread surprisingly fast. Students who normally trained on different days had shown up. A few former members stopped by to watch. Even people from neighboring academies had heard there might be an interesting demonstration. Travis Mercer enjoyed every minute of the attention. Standing near the center of the mat, he greeted visitors with the confidence of a man convinced he controlled exactly how the day would unfold. Across the room, Ethan arrived early and immediately searched for the woman. He spotted her near the entrance a few minutes later. She looked exactly the same as the day before. Simple gray sweatshirt, blue jeans, calm expression, no entourage, no attempt to impress anyone, just quiet confidence. As she stepped inside, conversations began to fade. Heads turned. Several students exchanged amused smiles. Travis noticed the reaction and grinned. "Well, look who came back." The woman offered a polite nod. "Good afternoon." Travis clapped his hands together loudly. "Everybody, our guest decided to join us after all." A few chuckles moved through the room. The woman remained composed. Travis walked closer. "Before we start, maybe you can tell everyone a little about your experience." Dozens of eyes focused on her. She considered the question carefully. "I trained for a number of years." Travis raised an eyebrow. "That is all." "That is enough," she replied kindly. A ripple of laughter spread through the academy. Travis smiled wider. "You are not making this easy." One student called from the back, "What belt did you have?" The woman glanced toward him. "It has been a long time. I do not really think about belts anymore." More laughter followed. Travis looked delighted. "That sounds like a beginner answer if I have ever heard one." Even some students who felt uncomfortable with his attitude laughed nervously. The social pressure in the room was growing stronger. Nobody wanted to stand apart from the crowd. Travis seized the moment. "Tell you what, we will do a simple demonstration." He turned dramatically toward the class. "Nothing serious. Just a chance for our guest to experience how we train here." The crowd responded with visible anticipation. Ethan watched the woman closely. Strangely, She did not appear nervous. If anything, she seemed almost thoughtful, like someone observing a situation rather than participating in it. Travis continued, "You can still change your mind." His voice carried a layer of mock concern. "No one will blame you." The room laughed again. The woman folded her hands in front of her and smiled politely. "I appreciate that." Travis waited. He expected hesitation. He expected excuses. Instead, she calmly added, "But I came here to learn about the academy. I do not think leaving now would teach me very much." Several students exchanged glances. Something about that answer landed differently. Travis noticed it too. His smile tightened slightly. For the first time, the exchange was not unfolding exactly as he had imagined. Yet his confidence remained intact. He still believed the next few minutes would confirm every assumption he had made. What he could not see was that each joke, each public challenge, and each attempt to embarrass her was quietly building toward a moment that nobody in the room was prepared for. And somewhere beneath the growing noise of the academy, the first cracks were beginning to form in the story everyone thought they understood. Travis motioned toward the training area and invited everyone to gather closer. The crowd formed a loose circle around the central mat, their anticipation growing with every passing second. The atmosphere no longer felt like a normal training session. It felt like a performance, and Travis clearly intended to direct every moment of it. The woman stepped forward without hesitation. Her movements remained relaxed and unhurried. She carried herself with the same quiet composure she had shown since walking through the academy doors. Ethan watched carefully from the edge of the group. The more he observed her, the more convinced he became that something was being overlooked. It was not confidence. Many people appeared confident. It was control. Every movement seemed deliberate. Every glance seemed measured. Travis folded his arms and addressed the crowd. "Before we begin tomorrow's challenge rounds, maybe our guest can help us with a few basic concepts." Several students smiled. They understood exactly what he was doing. He was not trying to teach. He was trying to expose what he believed was inexperience. "Tell me," Travis said, pacing slowly across the mat, "what is the most important quality for success in jiu-jitsu?" The woman considered the question. "Humility," she answered. A few students exchanged puzzled looks. Travis laughed softly. "Interesting answer." He turned toward the crowd. Most competitors would say discipline. Some would say consistency. Others would say technique. He glanced back at her. "But humility?" "Without humility," she replied calmly, "people stop learning." The room grew unexpectedly quiet. Travis quickly moved on. "All right then. What about confidence?" "Confidence is useful," she said. "But confidence without humility becomes a blind spot." A few students shifted uncomfortably. Derek looked away. Even he could feel the subtle change in the room. The conversation no longer felt one-sided. Travis smiled, but the smile seemed slightly forced now. "You have an answer for everything." "Only when someone asks." A few people struggled not to smile. Ethan noticed it immediately. For the first time all afternoon, Travis appeared irritated. The head instructor walked toward a display wall covered with photographs from tournaments and seminars. He pointed toward one framed picture showing several competitors standing on a podium. "Have you ever competed?" he asked. The woman looked at the photo for several seconds. "A long time ago." "Won anything?" Travis pressed. "Sometimes." Laughter rippled through the crowd again. Travis shook his head dramatically. "Sometimes. That is quite the resume." The woman simply smiled. The more he tried to provoke her, the calmer she became. Meanwhile, Ethan noticed something strange. As she studied the photographs, her eyes briefly paused on a picture taken nearly 10 years earlier. It lasted less than a second. Most people would have missed it entirely. But Ethan saw a flicker of recognition cross her face. Then it disappeared. Travis stepped back toward the center of the mat and raised his voice. "Tomorrow, one of our black belts will volunteer for a friendly demonstration. Nothing intense, just enough to show how our academy operates." Excited murmurs spread through the group. Several advanced students immediately offered their names. Travis nodded approvingly. The woman listened quietly. She neither objected nor appeared concerned. That confidence should have been reassuring. Instead, it unsettled the people paying closest attention. Because deep down, some of them were beginning to suspect that the woman standing before them was not walking into a trap. She was simply allowing everyone else to walk deeper into theirs. That evening, long after most of the students had gone home, The image of the woman lingered in Ethan's mind. Something about her did not make sense. Beginners did not answer questions the way she had. Beginners did not study movement with that level of focus. Beginners certainly did not remain calm while an entire room tried to turn them into a joke. Curiosity eventually got the better of him. Sitting in his apartment with a laptop balanced on his knees, Ethan began searching through old tournament archives and martial arts publications. At first, he found nothing. Then, nearly an hour later, he stumbled across a decade-old article from a regional championship. The photograph was grainy. The hairstyle was different. The woman was younger. But the eyes were unmistakable. Ethan leaned closer to the screen. His heart began to race. The article described a competitor named Claire Bennett. During her competitive years, Claire had become known for her technical precision, composure under pressure, and unusual ability to remain calm against far more aggressive opponents. Tournament organizers had called her one of the most disciplined competitors of her generation. Ethan opened another article, then another. The pattern became impossible to ignore. State titles, regional championships, national invitations, seminar appearances, coaching certifications. For nearly 15 years, Claire Bennett had built a reputation that reached far beyond her hometown. Yet around 8 years earlier, the public record seemed to stop almost overnight. No interviews, no tournaments, no seminars, nothing. It was as if she had simply disappeared. Ethan continued reading until he found a small feature buried inside an old martial arts newsletter. The article mentioned that Claire had stepped away from competition following a family tragedy. No details were provided. No dramatic explanation. Just a brief note stating that she had chosen a different path and declined all future media requests. Ethan sat back in silence. Across town, Claire stood on the back porch of a modest rental home overlooking a quiet neighborhood. The evening air carried the scent of freshly cut grass. Wind rustled the trees as the last traces of sunlight faded beyond the horizon. She held a warm mug between her hands and watched the sky darken. The academy was not the first place where people had judged her appearance. It probably would not be the last. Years earlier, such treatment might have bothered her. Now it barely registered. Life had taught her lessons that mattered far more than public opinion. She remembered crowded arenas, bright lights, nervous competitors pacing behind barriers. She remembered championship matches and long drives home after exhausting weekends. Most of all, she remembered the day she realized that trophies eventually collected dust while relationships required attention every single day. That realization had changed everything. The following morning, Iron Ridge Academy buzzed with excitement. Students gathered in small groups discussing the upcoming demonstration. Travis enjoyed every minute of the anticipation. He believed the event would reinforce his reputation and entertain his students. He had no idea that the quiet woman he had spent 2 days underestimating was carrying a history that surpassed anything hanging on his academy walls. And as the hours ticked closer to the demonstration, fate continued moving steadily toward a moment that would leave an entire room searching for words. Saturday afternoon arrived with the kind of energy usually reserved for tournament days. Cars filled the parking lot long before the scheduled demonstration. Students lined the edges of the mat. Visitors occupied every available chair. Even several instructors from neighboring academies had stopped by after hearing rumors about the unusual event. Travis Mercer stood at the center of it all, enjoying the attention. To him, the gathering represented validation. His academy was growing. His reputation was growing. And in his mind, the demonstration would simply reinforce both. Claire arrived a few minutes before the start. As usual, she entered quietly. No dramatic entrance. No announcement. No attempt to draw attention to herself. Yet nearly every head in the room turned when she walked through the door. Travis spotted her immediately. "Glad you made it," he called out. Claire smiled politely. "I said I would." The crowd settled into expectant silence. Travis addressed everyone with the confidence of a man who believed the outcome had already been decided. "Today is all about learning," he announced. "We're going to give our guest an opportunity to experience how advanced training works here." Several students nodded. Others exchanged amused looks. Ethan remained near the back, carrying the secret he had discovered the night before. He had considered saying something, more than once. But every time he imagined the conversation, he realized nobody would believe him. Not yet. Travis turned toward his advanced students. I need a volunteer. Before he could finish the sentence, several hands went up. Travis smiled and pointed toward a tall black belt named Ryan Carter. At 32 years old, Ryan was one of the Academy's most respected competitors. He was known for his calm demeanor and technical skill. Unlike Travis, Ryan appeared slightly uncomfortable with the situation. As he stepped forward, he offered Claire a respectful nod. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too, Claire replied warmly. Ryan immediately noticed something that others had missed. Her handshake was relaxed. Her posture was natural. Her eyes were steady. She did not look nervous. In fact, she looked completely at ease. Travis began explaining the demonstration to the audience. This will be friendly and controlled, he said. Just an educational exchange. Then he glanced toward Claire. Still plenty of time to back out if you want. A few people laughed. Claire simply smiled. I think I will stay. The response earned a few more chuckles from the crowd. Travis stepped aside, satisfied. In his mind, everything was unfolding exactly as planned. Yet Ryan found himself studying Claire more carefully. Something felt unusual. Experienced practitioners often recognized one another through small details. The way they stood, the way they moved, the way they observed a room. Claire displayed all of those signs. Ryan could not explain it, but a quiet voice in the back of his mind urged caution. Meanwhile, Ethan watched from the edge of the mat, his pulse quickening. He knew what Travis did not. He knew that the woman standing calmly in front of the Academy was not an inexperienced visitor walking into an uncomfortable situation. She was someone who had spent years operating at a level most people in the room could barely imagine. And as the crowd leaned forward in anticipation, the trap Travis believed he had prepared for Claire was about to begin closing around himself. The Academy fell into a strange silence as Ryan and Claire stepped onto the mat. Around them, dozens of people leaned forward in anticipation. Some expected an amusing lesson. Others expected an uncomfortable moment. Very few expected anything remarkable. Travis stood near the edge of the mat with his arms folded across his chest. The confident smile on his face suggested he already knew how the next few minutes would end. Ryan, however, felt something entirely different. As he faced Claire, his instincts continued sending quiet warnings. She did not look uncertain. She did not look overwhelmed. She simply looked present, focused, comfortable. The way experienced competitors often appeared before important matches. Ready? Ryan asked politely. Claire nodded. Ready. The instructor overseeing the demonstration stepped between them and explained the rules one final time. Everything would remain respectful and controlled. The goal was education, not competition. Both participants acknowledged the instructions. Then the instructor stepped aside. A hush settled across the room. For a moment, nobody moved. The Academy seemed frozen in anticipation. The distant hum of the air conditioner became audible. The sound of sneakers shifting against the floor echoed softly from somewhere near the back wall. Then the demonstration began. Ryan approached carefully. His movements were measured and professional. Claire responded with equal calm. Neither appeared rushed. Neither appeared emotional. To many observers, nothing unusual seemed to be happening. Yet Ethan noticed the difference immediately. Claire's posture changed almost imperceptibly. The relaxed visitor vanished. In her place stood someone operating entirely on experience and instinct. Every movement was economical. Every adjustment seemed purposeful. Ryan recognized it too. Within seconds, his expression changed. The casual confidence disappeared from his face. In its place came concentration, genuine concentration. For the first time all afternoon, he was no longer participating in a demonstration. He was solving a problem. The room grew quieter still. Several advanced students exchanged uncertain glances. Travis shifted his weight slightly. Something about the interaction was unfolding differently than expected. Then it happened. A smooth transition. A precise adjustment. One movement flowing naturally into the next. Nothing dramatic. Nothing flashy. Just timing, technique, and years of experience expressed through effortless efficiency. Ryan immediately recognized the position. A second later, he smiled and tapped the mat in acknowledgement. 14 seconds. That was all. 14 seconds from the moment the demonstration began until it ended. For a brief instant, nobody reacted. The Academy seemed unable to process what had just occurred. Conversations stopped. Smiles disappeared. The room went silent. Travis stared at the mat. One of the assistant instructors blinked repeatedly, as if convinced he had missed something important. Several students looked toward Ryan, expecting confusion or frustration. Instead, Ryan stood up and offered Claire a respectful handshake. "That was excellent," he said honestly. Claire accepted the handshake with the same calm smile she had worn since arriving at the academy. "Thank you." The silence deepened. Ryan was not embarrassed. He was impressed. And somehow that made the moment even more shocking. Across the room, Ethan felt a surge of satisfaction. Everything he had discovered was true. The woman they had underestimated for days had just revealed only a fraction of her ability. And judging by the stunned expressions spreading throughout the academy, the biggest surprise had not even happened yet. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. The academy remained frozen in stunned silence as the reality of what had just happened slowly settled over the room. Travis looked from Ryan to Claire and then back again, as if searching for an explanation that would somehow restore the comfortable assumptions he had held only moments earlier. But there was no explanation that fit. Ryan was not a beginner. He was not careless. He was one of the academy's most respected black belts. Yet he had just been outmaneuvered by the quiet woman many people had spent the last 2 days dismissing. The silence was finally broken by Ryan himself. He smiled and shook his head in disbelief. "That was not beginner experience," he said honestly. Several students laughed nervously. Others simply stared. Claire offered a polite smile, but said nothing. She seemed completely uninterested in celebrating the moment. That humility only made the scene more powerful. Then a voice came from the back of the room. "I knew it." Heads turned. Ethan stepped forward, holding his phone in one hand. Travis frowned. "Knew what?" Ethan swallowed hard. Suddenly, every eye in the academy was on him. "Last night I started researching." Travis folded his arms. "Researching what?" Ethan looked toward Claire before speaking. "Her." A murmur spread through the crowd. Claire's expression remained calm, but her eyes briefly lowered toward the floor. She already understood where this was going. Ethan opened a photograph on his phone and held it up. "Her name is Claire Bennett." Several people looked confused. The name meant nothing to them, but not to everyone. Near the back wall sat an older visitor named Professor Martin Hayes, a retired instructor who had spent decades involved in martial arts education. The moment he heard the name, his eyes widened. He slowly stood from his chair. "Claire Bennett," he repeated quietly. The room fell silent again. Martin took several steps forward, studying her face carefully. Then recognition spread across his features. "My goodness." His voice barely rose above a whisper. "It really is you." Students exchanged puzzled glances. Travis looked completely lost. Martin shook his head in amazement. "Do you people have any idea who this woman is?" Nobody answered. The retired instructor laughed softly. 10 years ago, every serious academy in this region knew her name. We used footage of her seminars for coaching clinics. Her technical instruction was studied across multiple states. The room went silent for the second time that afternoon. Several students stared at Claire in disbelief. One assistant instructor actually took a step backward. Ethan continued scrolling through articles and photographs. Tournament podiums, championship events, coaching seminars, recognition awards. Every image told the same story. Claire had not been a casual practitioner. She had been one of the most respected figures in her field. Travis felt the color drain from his face. Suddenly, every joke, every sarcastic comment, and every public challenge replayed in his mind. The room that had once laughed with him now looked at him very differently. Meanwhile, Claire remained exactly as she had been from the beginning. Calm, polite, unchanged by either criticism or praise. And in that moment, everyone present began to understand a lesson far more important than anything that could be taught on a training mat. True mastery had walked through the front door 2 days earlier. The only reason nobody recognized it was because they had been too busy judging the packaging. The academy remained quiet long after Martin Hayes finished speaking. Nobody seemed eager to fill the silence. The photographs on Ethan's phone continued circulating from student to student. Each image confirmed what many were still struggling to accept. The woman they had dismissed as a beginner had spent years achieving accomplishments most practitioners could only dream about. Yet what struck people most was not her record. It was the fact that she had never mentioned any of it. Claire could have introduced herself differently on the very first day. She could have listed titles, championships, and certifications. She could have corrected every assumption the moment it was made. Instead, she had chosen silence. Travis slowly stepped forward. For the first time since Claire had entered the academy, he seemed uncertain of what to say. The confidence that had defined him all week was gone. He glanced around the room before finally looking directly at her. "I owe you an apology." The words came slowly. "Honestly, I made assumptions about you before I knew anything about you." Nobody spoke. Claire listened patiently. Travis shook his head. "I thought I was teaching a lesson." He managed a small smile. "Turns out, I was the one getting taught." A few students laughed softly. Not at Claire, not even at Travis. The tension that had filled the academy for days was finally beginning to dissolve. Claire smiled kindly. "We all make assumptions sometimes." Travis looked surprised by the response. "You are not angry." Claire glanced around the room. What would be the point? The simplicity of the answer landed harder than any criticism could have. Ryan nodded in quiet agreement. Martin Hayes smiled. Ethan looked down at the floor, realizing he was witnessing something far more valuable than the demonstration itself. Claire gathered her things and prepared to leave. Several students immediately approached her with questions. Some asked about competitions. Others asked about coaching. A few simply wanted to thank her for the lesson she had given without ever intending to. She answered every question with patience and warmth. Eventually, she made her way toward the exit. Before stepping outside, she paused and looked back toward the academy. The room had changed. Not physically. The walls were the same. The mats were the same. The photographs still hung in their frames. But something deeper had shifted. The people inside were seeing one another differently than they had only a few hours earlier. Travis stood near the center of the mat, thoughtful and unusually quiet. Ryan was speaking with students. Ethan was helping gather equipment while smiling to himself. Claire opened the door and stepped into the afternoon sunlight. The cool breeze moved gently through the parking lot as she walked toward her car. Behind her, the academy buzzed with conversations that would likely continue for weeks. Yet Claire carried none of the satisfaction of proving someone wrong. She had never come there to win an argument. She had only come looking for a place to train. And that was perhaps the most important lesson of all. True confidence does not announce itself. True strength does not demand attention. The people who have accomplished the most often feel the least need to talk about it. And on that quiet Saturday afternoon, an entire academy learned that respect should never be reserved for people after their accomplishments become visible. It should be offered from the very beginning. Because the person standing quietly in front of you may be carrying a story far greater than anything you can see.